people just lost access to their banking for this whole entire digital ID. I'm curious, if we were to head in that direction, which it looks like we are, what would that mean for the TI community?
I think we were the beta testers.
So this will be rolled out, you're saying, to the masses.
I think that's the agenda and the intent. That's why it's so important for those that are targeted to engage in activism and to speak out and share their story, because the masses are asleep to this, and they need to know what is possible.
Yeah, I do think there's like some form of mind control happening to the masses. There's no way that
it's probably all frequency.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Yeah, the 5G towers, the telecommunication. I mean, like Kim said, it's the IO of everything, right? And everywhere. So yeah, I totally agree with you for sure. Yeah. Anyone else would like to add to
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Well, one, it's both. It's regular suggestion too. I mean, like there's studies that show just giving someone suggestions for pain while they're awake makes it, like fibromyalgia patients, makes changes to their brain while they're awake. It's just when they're in a hypnotic trance state, those changes are much more amplified. So the traditional brainwashing is still out there and still very effective. Speaking with Dr. Mahalchia, she's telling me that if they've got your biological signature, they don't even need an implant to target you. One of the things with what we're looking at, though, is, in a sense, we're at war right now. And I think people need to recognize that we're at war. What I'm seeing with the wireless torture and the sexual and the Havana syndrome, and even the voice to skull microwave auditory effect, the first thing that's popping into my mind is anybody working on a defense, because if you're using frequency, there has to be a way to jam those frequencies. Is anybody actually working on any type of defense toward that, devices that would actually protect you?
Actually, I can jump in here and I can show you. I have mine. Let me just disconnect it and show it to you right now. Armando has made one, and Melissa can talk about it while I get mine and show it. But I think Melissa has corroborated that it does work to shut down the V2K. In my case, it is amazing because it interferes with the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi 2.5 and 4.0, right? Signals that communicate with my implants, and it's just delightful. But if Melissa can jump in here, and because she tried it, let me get mine to show you.
Yes, and I've also used a previous version of the device as well. I find, because I've had the voice to skull since 2012. It escalated after gang stalking. I also have directed energy attacks, and I also have the electronic sexual assaults as well.
Does the device work with both auditory and the sexual assault, or just the auditory?
I have a physical shielding, which I can circle back around for the electronic sexual assault that I've created, and I have a YouTube on the Chosen Heroes YouTube. It's how to make that shielding device. It's a comfortable shielding device that women can wear, and I showed how to construct it. So I have that. I have Armando's device, which helps with the V2K and the directed energy, so that I can have, peaceful rest in the evening. I got to a stage where I had not dreamed in years, but when I started to use the device, I would have just regular dreaming. We do know, as people who get targeted, that we can have interference in our dreams too. And thought manipulation and all of that. But I find that the device helps me in the evening. I use it every single night.
I'm talking about the new one. There's, aside from the Silent Night, which I totally, for me, it helps with the remote neural monitoring and the bad dreams.
Mhm.
But this one is literally a blocker. And he is starting to test it. We're starting to test it now, because if the criminals don't change the frequencies they're using, it has proved to silence the voices on 3 people.
Wow.
And we're going to be testing it on other people to see, because it could be the key to, it totally. How do you see it? If we get this to shut down the voices for everybody?
Well, I want to caution people that it's very promising technology. Armando is a genius. He works under a company called Target Source LLC. For those that want to look it up online, it does appear to block the voice to skull, but we want to caution people that it still needs more testing. And if you're interested, then you can certainly contact him through his website. But he's overwhelmed with questions and orders and things like that. So Targeted Justice is not trying to promote this. We're simply saying we're supporting research in this area, and it looks promising. But we need to caution folks that we haven't come to a conclusion on it just yet.
No, don't feel bad. I think that was a good question, because Armando does create these things, and I know many who have used his products and they do work. So I'm happy to hear he's working on something else.
Well, this is a new one, you see,
Yeah.
and he asked, and so what I'm saying is, if the criminals don't change the frequencies they're using,
Right.
this device promises to bring back silence to the mind of the victims that have V2K. So
And
that's
an overall peaceful feeling, like your central nervous system is not being, hijacked when you're in front of that device. You're feeling calm and centered and yourself, not, inundated by frequency manipulation.
Yeah. I think that this can bring back a lot of peace for a lot of people. So let's just hope it works for as many people as possible. We're still experimenting.
21st Century Cures Act really protects those who do it to us, because it states that no consent is needed.
Well, what I do know is that it's the FDA that issued a regulation that entered into effect on January 24th of 2024 that made it legal for review boards to decide if a procedure was required informed consent or not. And that is how they're justifying that if it doesn't have an impact on the health, such as the wearables that RFK seemingly wants to push on everybody in this nation as part of his MAHA program, well, that is an invasion of your body. It's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. And regardless of that, FDA approved a regulation that needs to be eliminated because it gives a blank check for implantation everywhere, as long as it doesn't hurt you.
Right.
I do not consent, and that's why we emphasize so much. Even if it's going to the dentist, even if just getting a cleaning in your dentist, although we know that all dental anesthetics today contain nanotechnology, but one of the means that they like to implant you is through the RFID chips that they put in crowns. Because of the proximity to the brain, it's very easy to connect to the brain, right? So no, we do not consent, and that's why it's just a public awareness campaign that is happening, that people are getting implanted without knowing. So before the January 2024 regulation, there had been a prior regulation that everybody in jails could be implanted without telling them, without getting their consent, because they see them as having no rights. And I think that's horrific. It's inhuman. And that is something also that we need to tackle.
Yes, I agree 100%. Is there anything TIs can do to sort of like push back on this 21st Century Cures Act? How can we challenge it? What can we do to overturn it? Like, what are the chances that that's even a possibility?
I think that we need to work with RFK into, I have a posture that every single medical device that is manufactured in the United States or imported to the United States has to have a cradle to grave protocol.
Mm-hmm.
Because the FDA is supposed to do this, because if they malfunction, they're supposed to notify you about it so that you can get them removed. And that is not being done. So, but you know what? That's like number 10 in our priority, because our priority is to shut down these weapons.
Right.
People are dying in the truckloads, not just because, they're little directed energy weapon malfunctions, but because people are committing suicide or going in these mass shootings because they're being programmed by these criminals. So that should be everybody's priority, joining forces to shut down the weapons.
Yep. I totally agree. Awesome. Thank you. This was a really good segment. Before I move forward, anyone else would like to add anything?
I have something to say about the digital ID that they're pushing. And I think everybody, in order for us to get through this, should just not comply. Do not consent. Do not comply. That's like an eternal slavery that we'll never come back from.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. It's true. And I agree. Do not comply. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kim. So I don't believe James was able to join us today, but I actually was lucky enough to do a 2-hour interview with him a couple of days ago. So I will edit that into this. This is James Martinez with us today. I'm so glad that you're here with us. You've been carrying this conversation for years, long before most people even had language for it. How are you holding up these days?
It's very hard to describe. Very hard to describe, because of my position that I'm in at the moment, and historically, and also with what I have hands-on involvement with, which is basically, and we're at a point where we're being terraformed to such an extent that they're terraforming the last layer of behavioral software by the takeover of our brains through a very well thought out and well financed operation that's been designed to end free will, essentially. So this is the primary directive for me for talking to the public and doing any media at all. I mean, I'm only doing it now because we're in a critical is not strong enough a word, actually.
Right. It's an understatement.
Because of the United States, from my perspective and people that I work with, when I say that if there's the headquarters of mental illness is in the United States, because of the fact that soft kill weapons have been used and sanctioned, trauma militarized for weaponized purposes, means that our general population is really damaged, really damaged, and is being screwed with. So I'm just here to maybe steer the course of this situation, because of events that are going to be happening in the next couple of weeks. It's big enough that it'll the biggest people in the world will have to address it.
Wow. And you said the next couple of weeks. For those who don't know, I know that when you and I first spoke, that was really my first time of like learning about what that sovereignty looks like, right? And it's still a lot for me to wrap my head around, but I did start doing the research and educating myself, even the verbiage, right? Is that something that you plan to do for our community and for really everyone? Is that something
Yeah.
that you're like, because it's a learning curve, right? Like our community,
Yeah.
especially, we definitely needed, like,
Oh, that
really
look,
bad.
you have to claim what's yours.
Right.
And when that was designed, I had a conversation with like 4 or 5 people, and the person that wrote it, I said what I wanted in it, and I gave the model of what they were going to do, and this would counter the media ecological effects of what this would do to them as a person and to their family, friends, and all, the whole thing, everything, as much as I could, and then be able to put that in legalese language
Yeah.
to file as a declaration in the public forum into the system, so that uh, you've declared and made a declaration and correction to um, who and what you are to the system. Because at this point, in biblical terms, they see us as heathens
Mm-hmm.
because we're in the book of Job and we've not returned the bill of lading back to its source, the receipt. That's part of it, but that's a signal to the system of that you know who you are, and they know that you know who you are. But
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to tell you until
Right.
you know who you. And that's how it works, because when you're in court, they play these tricks, gaslight you, and do everything to throw you off. So you have to cover your 4 corners. It's referred to in some expressions. The 4 corners of the courtroom are all your arguments in position, so they're boxed. Put them in a box, psychological box, where you can't. And that's got to be your legal setup when you go in and speak, because it's what's the most significant piece in the Bible is what was it? And the Word was God, and the God was the Word. In the beginning, God was the Word spoken. So you have to speak in the language of where you're located in the court, and you have to be able to put that on paper, and you got to know it and understand it. Then 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 you can really kick some ass if you want to.
Right.
But you gotta it's a lot of work. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy to do this, because you have to unlearn bullshit that's been shoved in there for years, and you have to get over all these false paradigms that people are living under that aren't true at all. All of that's
Mhm.
falling to pieces. So
Yeah.
you might remember, and people may look and find it, when Barry Soetoro said, soon people aren't going to know what's real and what's not real. Well,
Mhm.
he's right. He's absolutely right. And he's
Yeah.
saying it with arrogance and confidence, because he's been part of the hallucination that people have been under about who runs the show, and the fact
Mhm.
that, we're technically occupied, and on
Right.
multiple levels. And people are going to have to deal with the extraterrestrial thing, even though even if they don't believe that at all, it's easy to get out of that. You can say, well, if you don't believe that's possible and you think that's crap, that's fine. Then you can just say, if it's not a legitimate cultural phenomena, it is a legitimate psychic phenomenon.
Right.
So you're
Yeah.
safe either way, however way you want to think about it. But the
Mhm.
fact of the matter is, when they're in front of Congress talking about what's going on behind the national security curtain, as far as what they reframed and relabeled, because they
Mhm.
wanted to change the jurisdiction and language, which is a trick. They changed it to UAP.
Right.
Like that that whole group and everything that's going on over there, it's just, you're in behavioral software engineering. You're in it. Because if you're going to have disclosure, you disclose. And that's not happening, because it's being done in stages, because I'm getting email almost daily from people that don't even introduce themselves, don't say anything about themselves, and they go right into the fact that, well, I was stretched out here, and then they put a thing in here, and then they electrocuted, and then I went on an airplane, and then they threw me in here, and then I was in a casket, and I thought I was dead. And then after that, I went to McDonald's and I ate there, and then I didn't know why I was there, and then before you know it, it was my birthday.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's what they email me.
Wow.
So they don't, I mean, if you can't, if you're going to be branding yourself a victim, then you better know how to explain yourself as a victim, so you don't completely discredit yourself. But most people don't. They're not there. They're more comfortable saying that they're targeted individuals. I've been fucked over. Okay, I
Yeah.
believe you. I'm not saying you're not getting fucked over, but
Right.
there's also people that are faking it. I can tell you that.
That's true. Yeah. There's
Because
many.
they got nothing else to do and they need some attention.
Right. Yeah.
Because in America versus in Europe, over there, it's all about attention. We have a different form of prostitution than we've ever had in the history of the world, with the attention whores that'll do anything. So that's a big problem, and most of those people are harvested and used, and they don't
Right.
even know. You don't even know it.
Mhm.
They have no
Yeah.
idea the entire time they're just being totally used, and the whole thing's faked. And it was
Right.
financed by somebody else because they're just going to dump your ass after they finish with you anyway. So they don't care about you. You did their job. Get out of here. And that's the attitude. Sorry to say, but it is.
Yeah.
They
Well,
really don't have any respect for the general public. Trying to get that through to people that there's a specific group of individuals that are like this, and they don't have a problem killing off lots of people. It's murder, death. It's in colloquial U.S. way, I would say, it's Star Wars, literally.
mhm. Would you say this is really like, some people are saying that this is part of the New World Order, or so this is a deep state. This is the elites that are, the agenda for depopulation. Like, what do you think this is really under, or why it's
This
happening?
is the lifting up of the national security curtain and the introduction of advanced intelligence into human culture, whether it's extraterrestrial or not, and the meteor ecological effects of that on our physical bodies, because they're terraforming them.
Mhm.
And they're
Wow.
actually they're terraforming them, but they're actually way further along than you would ever imagine. We're in BCI land already, and it's already causing problems. It's already causing problems.
Oh, no,
Profound,
absolutely.
profound problems. Don't get overwhelmed. Take it step by step.
Okay.
If they go to my Patreon account, as soon as they join, I'll give them the declaration letter.
Yeah.
Now, I'll explain what this is, because I think this is primarily what people wish to do, because they feel helpless. So, when you file this, you have to understand what it is that you're filing and why you're filing it. Okay. And you have to understand what a courtroom is and what's really going on in there, and why you place your hand on a Bible. All of that. Think about that. And then you need to think about, when you read through the Clone Act and the whole thing, it's a template designed to take your mind into a position where you're completely thinking differently, and you're essentially marking your territory, your private territory, and in the phonetic alphabet on paper. Now, that this has never been done like this before, ever, because there's no laws or
Right.
anything. There is case law, but there's no laws that have been set in place for our rights, you and me. And people have to understand, including all your peeps, that you are the country. You have way more power than you think. Everybody's been conditioned to give their power away, and they'll take care of it. No, we're not
Right.
there anymore. Now you can't do that. You're not going to make it. You won't make it. If you pass it off to somebody else, you have to be in charge of you asserting yourself into the situation. Because I'm seeing how they're putting on pressure on companies and employees to start adding devices onto their head. And they're gonna make it so sexy. They'll make it so sexy. They'll make it so sexy that you'll just run down to the Apple store like other morons and wait because you got to get the new phone. You got to get this thing because they're going to do this. And I mean, they're so excited, but meanwhile they're committing suicide, basically.
Yeah.
We're in a gigantic suicide event, extinction event. Then the ego, your ego, and how you feel about yourself directly reflects how that template makes sense to you. And now I tell people when they get this template, they can add or subtract. They can put in evidence, attachments, their nails, blood samples, hair. It's your thing.
Right.
And I'm not saying not to do that. In fact, I should do that. I've not done that yet. So it's a template for you making a declaration about yourself to the system where they're taking you out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then once you're in that position, that's a different frame of mind that you have to now live in and exercise. So this is not an easy journey to walk on because you have to take complete responsibility for your reality. There's no lawyers, and I talk to lots of lawyers. When I bring up this subject, they are lost. They're lost.
Yeah.
They don't talk about consciousness as a legal and lawful USC section 15.02. No, there isn't any of that. The only thing that exists with any success in this country that all of you should reference if you're concerned is the James Walbert case. James Walbert case was the guy that beat out the company that implanted him in a court case. It took a while and took a lot of money and time. And he showed up in Wired magazine. I was the first to break that because he showed up to me in my camp. And because I knew that this stuff was going on behind the scenes years and years and years and years ago. So in terms of the document needs to be you express in your declaration in such a manner that you're fully satisfied with it when you're done. Some people, they'll handwrite it. Some people will type it and put their thumbprint with signature around it in red. Some people will use blue ink. Some people will use purple ink. Different codification means different things depending upon what you know. But it's still your choice to do that and what that means. So then I usually instruct people to file it in the county recorder's office. It's the recorder's office. It records information.
Yeah.
Public statements. Now they'll go down there in some cases and say, "Oh, we only record land titles and da 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 da." You got a title? It's you. You're the surety.
Right.
That's an estate. They don't know that when you're talking to them though. Most people, the problem is when the more you know, sometimes it's more difficult to navigate in culture because the people you're talking to, they don't know shit. It's pathetic. And they won't look it up because they're lazy as hell and they just want to get paid and they're just blah, blah, blah. So you're confronted with these like hurdles that you have to deal with. And that's a big one of them because they don't know what you're talking about. So, and another thing too is when you mail this and you finally figure it all out, this is a legal document. And if you are sending that, because you can send it to the county recorder, you can send it to the police department in the form of an affidavit. You're making a statement telling somebody who the fuck you are.
Right.
And this is how it is, period.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a very noble gesture to do when you're saying that to law enforcement first before you get into any conflicts with them. And you will get into conflicts with them because they don't know what the hell they're talking about either.
Right.
Because how are they supposed to know when they're arresting and pulling over that this people, the people that they're arresting or maybe dealing with, aren't media casualties from neurocognitive weapons being used on them?
Right.
They don't know any of that. They
Right.
know nothing about that. Zero, zilch. They're morons. They've got no clue at all. And then you're confronted with that possibly. You need to know how to deal with that because they won't.
Yeah.
So these are very important statements and understandings that you have to have because the people that are doing this think, okay, I'm doing this because I make a statement to them and I'm going to get some protection for this. You're getting some protection because you're making the declaration, but then you got to act on top of it. You can't just sit back. You got to be really assertive. You can't be on defense. You go on offense.
Right. So
That's
what do
a
you
different
say
thing.
after putting that declaration, sending it to everyone, we need to, with then learning about the sovereignty and the language, would that follow? Would you say that?
You do that at the same time, but I would say don't marry any instructors. You
Okay.
gotta, it takes a while to figure out because I don't use that word sovereign. And
Okay.
if people are using that word, they're getting into a lot of trouble for it. They're putting all sorts of YouTube videos about sovereign citizen gets blasted
Yeah.
because they're doing that because they don't want you to know. And most of the people that go in there aren't prepared. They're not prepared right to go in there.
So what do you call it? Like if
I
we
know
want to
people,
start doing like our research, what is it called?
well, you have to surrender the original instrument that is the decedent of your birth. And you have to go through something, it's sometimes people call it the seven seals process, or because it's a biblical thing, because of because of the LIBOR code, a bunch of laws. I wish I would have wrote them all down, but you are trading with the enemy because you're banking with the enemy. That's why you're treated in such a way. And people don't understand these things because they don't take the time. Reading law is boring, but when people are motivated, they can be very good at it. But when you understand these things, you're telling the commercial system by contract who you are, and that
Right.
I'm not going to contract with this, and I'm not going to contract with this, because all the courts are based on commerce. It's all commerce. Commerce meaning I have an idea, you have an idea, we do this, and we do it every single day. Contracts, right? So that's where it all ends up. And you got to tell them that you're not going to be contracting with them in a certain way, and you notify them. And the stakes are always changed because of how you use the postal system. The postal system was around before the United States, and people don't know anything about that and what its real function is. And they don't know that there's the United States Postal Service, and then there's the actual postal office. Those are two separate and totally different things.
Wow.
And they mean separate things also. And what your address that you keep means a certain thing, the way it's coded. And nobody's been informed of these things. So it requires moving on to take that instrument declaration, and then when you mail it, you're going to mail it. You can either do certified, or you can bond it and send it registered. Because when you send it registered, they have to sign it. Because once they sign it and it's been received, now it's bonded, becomes a bond. It's evidentiary, which couldn't be used in court because it's like a instrument as evidence. It's evidence, stuff for court. You have received something, I have told you. That changes everything. So you keep these, when you file it, you make a certified copy of the declaration. You stamp it. It is a certified legitimate copy. And you say it's a copy, and maybe you want to go to the notary public and have them sign off on that you're making a legitimate copy. It's my copy of this. And this is a witness, and you want to sign this, so there's no bullshit. People do that. They really go out of their way to do stuff like this. And that's thorough, and it's good.
I
Because
will.
once
I'm
it
gonna do that.
goes and you
Yep.
need this stuff, when you need
Yeah.
it,
You'll have these statements, which will basically become statements like affidavits, which are sworn statements in court, which means
Right.
anything that's said in there now is evidence because you have taken an oath to your word and the
Right.
codification of what that word is on the paper.
Mm-hmm.
The spoken word and the word on the paper, that's a different thing when you're doing this type of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
it's that's a lot what I've just said there, but it's important that people know that that's what it's for. Is you're creating a court situation. You
Mm-hmm.
take yourself seriously, you should. You're going to do this, and you're going to have a signature at the end of this deal for
Right.
whoever you're telling it to. With the county recorder, all you're doing is filing it and saying this is the deal. Nobody's going to rebut you generally. In other states, people tell me, "Oh, I can't do it. I can't do it." Then you file a UCC1 online electronically. Now it's on the public record, federal public record. But some people wish to do it locally in other ways. So I don't tell people do this or don't do this. It's up to the individual that wants to do that and how they want to do it. They have to take responsibility for doing it, is what I'm saying. That's why I'm not telling you A or B or just A. I
Yeah.
want people to figure this out for themselves and be real thorough about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people are going to put it in international courts. They're going to send it to the Vatican. All this stuff is going down right now. And I can say, but there's going to be huge lawsuits that will be public exercises in taking your power back and understanding that your consciousness is being legislated now without your consent. And that news story, when I do that, that's going to need to go all over the world, because then it's not me, it's everybody. And this is the good silver lining of this, is that this is the biggest major human rights thing of all time that's happening right now. So that being said, it's a great opportunity to bring people together for once, if they fucking understand what the hell's really going on. If you can get them there after 12 lines of cocaine and 50 bottles of champagne and this and everybody in LA banging their head
Yeah, I
against the
mean, they're not
wall.
even themselves, really. A lot of them, right? They're hijacked. A lot of these people, they are. So we do
Because
gotta find a way to get them back.
anybody that's sending me the type of email that I get, it's if you didn't know any better, you'd be like, wow, this guy's really out there. Wow, this guy's really out there, and
Yeah.
he's staying out there, and he doesn't want to come back. It's a lot to deal with, because they're bringing in the whole extraterrestrial thing happening now, as
Yeah.
because the government in official positions are coming out and making statements, and most of the public doesn't even know that it's happened. And that's what they do.
Mhm.
They just come out and say, yeah, we're bending the space-time continuum. Yeah, that's what we do. We do it for a while. We do it over here and we do it there. We got to go now. Bye. And then
Right.
it's over in 10 minutes. And
Yeah.
then nobody picked up on that, and what the
Mhm.
ramifications of that means, and what they
Yeah.
can do, and what they've been doing. We are in Star Trek. The
Right.
MK Ultra part of it allowed them to get to Star Trek by using us
Yeah.
to get there,
Yeah.
because that's exactly where it is. And I get invited to all these conferences to talk, and I turn down most of them because I don't like the framing of them at all, and it doesn't. I don't get anything out of it per se.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but I may do some of that in an official capacity very shortly,
You should.
because this is the one thing where everybody can come together and say, we're not doing this, because you're not going to get a second chance.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know how to get through to people other than to say, this is the Bible.
Mm-hmm. What do you say? We're in Revelations. This is it.
Well, yeah, when they're taking your mind away, yes, and
Mhm.
they're altering your genetic signature without your consent. And then
Right.
when they get you to consent to it, then you don't have any right over even your own body
They own your body.
Mhm.
You're a corporate vessel anyway. But when you took all these chemicals and shots and everything, now you're just government property. So they can experiment on you. They don't have any liability if you fucking drop dead tomorrow or whatever. They did all this and they got us to agree to it.
Yeah. Yeah. The
You have to.
21st Century Cures Act.
Silence is acquiescence.
Yes.
Nobody can be silent right now. And
Yeah.
I'm not talking about yelling at each other on social media.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about going to the people that are authority figures above you
Mm-hmm.
and dealing with them, because
Yep.
they'll be used against us. And
Mm-hmm.
it's already happening now. I can see it already, because we have to sort of go back to our divinity. I don't know how else to say it, because I don't care who you are in the country or the world. If you're here right now, you chose to be here and you have a right to exist.
Yep.
And you have a play in this. And how are you going to decide? And are you going to take your power back or not? And I didn't. It's not an easy process, because I'm still doing things myself with certain people to prepare for this big change.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's I say this quote that RFK Jr. said because it's so true. It's so true. And the heart of the matter is a matter of the heart. And he said, when he went over to Trump's side right before that problem, he says, we, the people, have to love our children more than we hate each other.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Melissa Miller, and I am a targeted survivor. I became targeted in 2012 when I worked for a private business in Houston, Texas, owned by a millionaire who was well connected politically and with various law agencies. While employed there, I discovered adverse actions impacting their employee population and the general public. When I voiced my findings, their leadership threatened, in person, that if I did not cease reporting my findings, I would suffer a negative consequence to my life. That is when my targeting experience began, and unfortunately, it extended out to attacks on my mother. God rest her soul. It began with gaslighting, bullying within the office, then on to organized stalking, property destruction, a tapped landline in my home. I reported the tapped line to the police, and an officer threatened me, stating, "Don't I know who I'm up against?" referring to the well-connected millionaire. The Houston FBI was of no help. Matters only continued to get worse. My targeted experience escalated from being stalked and drugged once while out in public, then escalated to externally generated auditory targeting, also known as B2K or synthetic telepathy, in addition to 24/7 surveillance, monitoring, non-consensual neurotechnology directed energy, which creates pain, pressure, volts and jolts, and burns on my body. I turned my pain into purpose to help others like myself and created a weekly podcast about a year ago titled The Chosen Heroes to help others navigate their targeted journey, sharing the wisdom that I've gained and learned in the 13 years of my experience. The Chosen Heroes live streams on Rumble, X, and YouTube at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time each Sunday. Please tune in, speak out, educate, We are all in this fight together. God bless.
Melissa, you had a chance to interview Jamie Rice. Would you like to give us some information on the sovereignty and what that could mean for TIs?
Yes, absolutely. Jamie Rice, I co-host a teleconference with her that is typically on a biweekly schedule. She has, developed, and this is 20 plus years of her own personal experience and seeking and engaging, self-healing. She developed a modality called poli-sci, which is policing state. And it gives it was done for targeted individuals, and she will be publishing that, but we also do, within the workshops there is an accompanying guide and handbook, and she created recently a declaration of self-governance, cognitive sovereignty, and divine reclamation. And what that does is just kind of solidifies the neural rights and the sovereignty of each individual. And it's like a personal declaration that they can, recite to themselves and keep on hand as a reminder of their, divine birthright, and that we should not relent to, or, be from this targeting experience, that we have to truly pursue our self-healing, to get, it is the kryptonite to this program, because everything that this program is designed from is of the lower mind. So what the lower mind is focused on is going to be, fear, trauma, grief, pain, and suffering, and anxiety, loss, disconnection and disassociation. And essentially, this program has many tactics and maneuver techniques that is used to take our own garbage, which is like our doubts, our insecurities, and our fears and past experiences, and to beat us with it. You're in that constant, elicited state of fight, fawn, and freeze. And when a mind is, in that constant state, I think their goal is, and this is reason why that, Project Monarch was so successful in young children, is to splinter the mind so that it can be fragmented and easily controlled, manipulated, and reprogrammed. And I think that, a lot of what this program is, again, trying to do that, either subliminally, through, frequencies and such. So, it really is important for those that, are being targeted to connect with their higher mind, and which is their higher self, and a higher power, God, and to reclaim their divinity and their birthright and mantle. And because our healing, it's like waves of the collective, it raises the vibration of humanity, because we truly are at a war against machine and technology. We're in a battle of our souls, being overtaken for ill purposes and, pursuits that are, monetarily and other ways advantage to those that, are a part of letting these programs persist. And that's why it is so very crucial and important for, those being targeted to participate in the activism and sharing their story. So I always encourage people to share their story, because I think one of the greatest gaps that we have in this human trafficking, because this is what this program is the voices that are not speaking out, whether it be out of fear, intimidation. And to me, being someone who has the auditory effect, and it can be pretty mediocre at best. I'm an analyst, so it's very pattern driven, right? So we have to see through the charade of these tactics and techniques, because what they are is just, very old school brainwashing, fear, intimidation, isolating, all of those things. Because the key to this is, if people would understand, those being targeted, it's as simple as this. In order for them, the them of all who is behind all of this to win, they have to have our buy-in. They have to have our emotional trigger and response. So God revealed to me early on that if I got to the emotional root in pain, that this, either the gaslighting, the mobbing, the gang stalking, the auditory effect was triggering in me, and I got to it and I healed it, it had no control or power over me. And I think that pattern recognition is the biggest advantage. That, journaling is very important, because you're going to see that this is very cyclic. They are it's very pattern driven.
Yeah.
So once we come to terms of, okay, this is something that is coming against me that needs my buy-in. Okay, now we flip the script and we are in the power seat of, okay, how we choose to respond to it. So and to bridge that gap of sovereignty, we must embrace in our self-healing and our self-work, to get, to look those skeletons in our closet head on, and, and to meet it head on, and knowing that, and remembering, connecting into that higher self, because that is our path back into our life. I try to tell TIs all the time that, before targeting, we've got to let that go, because now we're in a new chapter and a new page, and you are tapping in to leaving, the victim of this non-consensual torture behind, and embracing that powerful warrior within. And you need God and a higher power and the universe to back you. And that's why it's so important for them to connect into that higher power, because God can move the mountains that you're not able to physically, and while you're focusing on your healing and your liberation.
I think we need to start really grounding ourselves and doing the work, and regaining ourselves and learning again, like, where are we, who are we, where we're going, to release it.
The experience can really teach you, who you are and what you're capable of, and what you would never have thought was possible from you. I look at it, and it takes, those that are being targeted are in different stages. So I always give grace, because, I'm 13 years in, and my targeting led me into a spiritual, journey and quest, and self-discovery, and, awakening and embracing and learning. I think it's also very important, because like I said, I'm an analyst. When I started digging into the psychology of a predator, gang stalking, mobbing, psychopaths and narcissists, because that is the root of how the design of these programs, relate to. And also, how the biggest question has always come up is, in the beginning for me, was how can you heal when you're perpetually violated, especially for men and women that are having an electronic, sexual assault, those that have been, rape survivors, sexual assault, abuse survivors. They may have went through it from, maybe it was a one-time event, or maybe it occurred over a period of time. But for those that are targeted, this is a 24/7, that you're having to deal with. And that's why we have to diffuse it, by chasing our healing and understanding what it is. So we know that, okay, at any given moment, we might, have to be subjected to this torture. But what can we do in the interim to start healing and recognizing ourself and our power and control over how we respond to it? And what can we do to mentally shield from that? Is it, prayer, meditation, energy healing, modalities, tapping into our creative side and making sure that we don't lose ourselves, but to keep ourselves grounded. We have to come up with our own counter maneuvers for this experience. And from one person to another, it may vary, but we have to be in heavy pursuit of it. We got to chase it like nothing else matters, because that is how we survive, we help others, and that we conquer this. And, without God and a higher power connection, it just isn't, it's not going to be the same.
I agree 100%. And you said it so beautifully. You have such a soothing voice too.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're awesome.
I'm
Thank you
very
so much.
passionate about this.
I love that. No, but it's very true. It's true. I started watching your podcast, and I learned so much from you, and you have great, especially this one, Jamie Rice. That interview was amazing, and that's really why I was like messaging you a lot. I'm grateful that you were able to join us today. I'm like, I need her on this. But it's very true. I mean, what would you suggest for those TIs that haven't yet started that journey? What would be step one for them?
I think the first thing, it take a baby step. It doesn't have to be something significant, but you've got to dip your toe in the water. You have to tap into something that is self-care related. Do something for yourself that helps you. Don't focus. You've got to take at least a moment out of your day, right? You've got to set some time aside going, hell or high water, I am not going to think about this targeting experience. I'm going to get outside. I'm going to connect with nature. I'm going to play some soothing music. I'm going to dance. I'm going to sing. I'm going to do something for myself. I'm going to watch my favorite movie. I'm going to take a long, hot, bath and, have some essentials. I'm going to do laundry. I'm going to do something, but I'm not going to stay stuck. And I'm going to set the time aside for myself. And that is your first step. It can be just something as small as that, and then build up. And I cannot express enough how prayer, how you wake up and set the tone for the day, using positive affirmations. That is great for, that first step for somebody getting into, reclaiming their self-worth and seeing them through an authentic lens that of their divine birthright, the God vision of who they are, not these distorted lies and deceptions that are being spun out on a 24/7 basis at somebody, that are they're just labels and distortions. And that is what the poli-sci that Jamie has developed has, meditations and practice exercises to get you out of that triggered response. And again, there's many different ways. Breath work is so important. Simply grounding outside barefoot, or having a grounding mat or sheet, all of these things that can help reduce the inflammation and the hyperactivity response that is going in the body. Healthy habits, not destructive habits, letting go of those, and just focusing on that path for yourself that is the self-care, the prayer, the meditation, the healing modalities. There's a technique called emotional freedom technique. I did an episode on that. There's so many things out there. And yoga, things that are made to calm the vagus nerve, the central nervous system. When you're in that hypervigilant state, breath work, you don't have anything else around you, breathing, doing different breathing techniques can significantly diffuse. Prayer, right in that moment of having, an attack, can just cut through it and help, connecting with yourself, feeling your body and where you are in that moment, just knowing that, okay, you in telling yourself, I'm going to be okay. My obstacles are moving out of the way. You know, there's all these different ways that you can start. And it just takes repetition. It's like building up a muscle. You can't just do it one time. You've got to chase it. It's got to become the most important thing each and every day, to not let this program win.
Absolutely. Thank you. I love that. So, Melissa, I know many in the community, they believe we're under attack, right? We're at war, but this is a spiritual warfare. Would you agree?
Absolutely, it is. I think that it is an attack on, the soul. DARPA even has a Project Soul Snatcher.
Wow.
They did a study on those that, connected to a higher power and God versus those that didn't. So if their focus is on that, then the last thing that they want you to do is to connect with a higher power and tap into your higher self and see yourself through an authentic lens of what you're capable of and your empowerment. This wants to keep people small. And they don't want you to chase that. They don't want you to embrace that healing, because then it's not going to work. It's not going to be effective.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Do we have anyone else on the panel that'd like to add?
I agree with everything she said. It's a spiritual war. You have to stay grounded. You have to find your bliss, and they hate when you find your bliss. So I agree. If from moving from the victim stage to the survivor, you've got to really be on top of your spirituality and your connection with spirit. Yeah. Well said, Melissa.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, well said. Awesome. Thank you so much. So we're going to move ahead with our next topic, which is the psychiatric medical gaslighting. So, as we all know, especially those in our community, most of us experience medical gaslighting. And it's happening at an alarming rate. And this is what led me to believe that all of that, like, it's such a sophisticated system, right? They put in place that even those that we're supposed to trust, like our doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists, etc., unfortunately, they play a role whether they are aware of it or not. So I'll lean on to you, Dr. Sanson. What do you think? From your experience, have you noticed maybe like an increase or decrease in types of patients that you've seen? Have you had patients with a lot of these issues that we've talked about today? And what is your take on the direction we're headed?
Well, remember, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a psychotherapist, but I mean, I not too many. I've had a few, but just go back to the roots of what we're looking at here. With Darwin and his the co-founder of the theory of natural selection, Russell Alfred Wallace, I believe his name was. Darwin was it was later, in the late 1800s, the term eugenics was phrased, but Darwin kind of promoted early eugenics. And Russell Alfred Wallace did not, and I think one of the reasons is probably because he was a spiritualist, so he was connected to that higher power. And I think that if you saw that developed in the early 20th century progressives with the eugenics that they started pushing then, and it was perfected by the Nazis. And out of that, is where we got our MK Ultra program, because they've kind of perfected that. It's when you look at the human being not as an expression of divinity, but as a biological machine, then you're open to all kinds of crazy experimentation on them. So I think that's kind of the genesis of what we've looked at over the last 150 years. But with the gaslighting, I mean, we're seeing that on a massive scale right now. I mean, the reality is most people we know are going to have a shortened lifespan because they were injected with a biological and technological weapon of mass destruction. And they're still being lied to by their doctors. I mean, I literally was speaking to someone today, whose family members in congestive heart failure, and the doctors are saying, well, it could have been from COVID, not from the quote unquote vaccine, which is utterly ridiculous. No blockages, but congestive heart failure out of nowhere. So yeah, I mean, gaslighting's happening now with the targeted individuals. I think for anybody that's even paid attention to it, I think the consensus view is that it's a group delusion being fed by the internet, which for some people, quite frankly, it might be, because if I have schizophrenia or psychosis and hallucinations, delusions, and if I'm if I'm paranoid schizophrenic, let's just use the stereotypical, I'm getting that reinforced online. So that could be a percentage of people, but yeah, I don't think there's any awareness of this issue, generally speaking, with the mental health community. Now you get the crazy psychiatrists; they're doing experiments. That's a whole different issue. But I'm just talking with your. I don't think there's much awareness to this issue, to be honest with you. And little awareness there is, I think it's being viewed as a group delusion. But there's too many now. Some of the issues that we've talked about, like for the gang stalking, is that as widespread as people are saying? I don't know, because there'd be a lot of resources poured into that. I know it exists because, like I told you, when I spoke with Nate Kane earlier, I know he was targeted and poisoned twice with contact poisons, and I know other people now, but those are people being specifically targeted for their activism. But I mean, we know that they're doing this randomly too, as part of a broader experiment. And then even when we're looking at the gang stalking, is that a frequent, is it actually gang stalking, or could at times that be a frequency based hallucination? In other words, you're being targeted with the frequency, causing you to think you're being gang stalked. So I think there's a few variables there, but I think there's probably less gaslighting in the mental health community, and probably more total lack of awareness of this issue. In other words, they're just going to assume. So it might be a de facto gaslighting. Like, in other words, if you came in with this issue, I'm automatically going to assume you're like a paranoid schizophrenic, that kind of thing. Which is why, again, I go back to, I think we need to establish actual protocols within the mental health community. For instance, probably you need to rule out a bunch of medical conditions. And then you need to rule out, like, even parasites can cause hallucinations, certain parasites. So you need, I think, and I don't think there's anything close to that being developed. And I'm not saying I have the answer of what that protocol would be. Certainly looking for a biological signature of some kind for if you're under a frequency-based attack, because I don't believe every case there are implants. I think some people are being targeted with frequency that they don't have implants. So if there could be a biological signature, and I know Safe and Sound Pro does there's a pretty good, I think, this microwave and EMF. It's like a $400 device you can get on Amazon. I know people have gotten that. So that might be something to look at, because if I'm like in a field nowhere near a computer or anything, I shouldn't be, having a high frequency there. So maybe that's a way to determine a biological signature of some kind. Because I'm telling you right now, if you walked into my office, I don't think I'd know if you're being targeted or if you're having hallucinations or delusions. I think that's a real problem because I'm aware of the issue.
Right. Yeah. So how can we bridge that gap? What can TIs do? Or maybe how can we better explain it to our doctors, right? How can we build that trust, or just open dialogue where you're not going to just brush us off? Because what I'm finding here is that our community, we now stay away from the therapists and counselors, psychiatrists. We do, simply because they're just going to say, hey, she got no marbles, she's lost it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we have to find a way to bridge this gap, because it's absolutely happening. You know what I mean? And yes, to your point, I'm sure that there's a percentage of these people who may already have, or predisposed to something actual mental health wise, right?
And
But
don't forget, somebody can have a mental health condition and be targeted.
I was just going to say, yeah, they can have both, right? But how can we determine, to your point, yes, we do need a protocol, but before we get there, because who knows how long that'll be,
Right.
what can we do to bridge this gap?
Well, okay, so keep in mind, I would probably say finding a more holistic doctor to begin with.
Okay.
For instance, I would not go to a doctor, a medical doctor I'm speaking about right now, that does not know that the mRNA nanoparticle injections are weapons of mass destruction. Do
Okay,
not go to a
that's
doctor
a
that's
good
not
tell.
aware of that.
Gotcha.
Because first of all, they're an idiot if they don't know that. But so right there, you might have someone that's more open to this, and then finding psychiatrists that are a little more holistic, certainly, as well as therapists like myself, because I don't think you're gonna. I think your typical medical doctor that just basically is on the pharmaceutical, treadmill. It's they don't even. I go to a functional medicine doctor, like I joke around because they still practice medicine. Like they focus on immunology and inflammation, that kind of thing. They'll do supplements and send you to compound pharmacy, but your regular doctor is just going to, prescribe you whatever and see you for 5, maybe 10 minutes and off you go. So I think how are you going to explain? How could you possibly explain this targeted issue to a medical doctor that you're going to see for about 5 minutes?
Right.
That's not going to happen. And so the answer, I guess, would be to find someone more holistic to begin with, whether it's a therapist or a medical doctor.
Mm. I'm curious, someone in your line of work, how do you, I guess, look at Havana syndrome? If one of your patients were to come to you, I know you sound like you obviously know this is happening, right? But let's
Well,
just say you
okay.
didn't fully understand. How would
So,
someone like you, look at that?
I mean, probably what I would do is probably, look at getting that device that I just mentioned, the Safe and Sound Pro, and walk out
Mhm.
in the field and see if we're getting the frequency.
Mhm.
Maybe that would be a way to look at it. But here's the thing, though. If you're going to a therapist, they can't stop the targeting, right? So the
Right.
only thing the therapist could do, I mean, I think a lot of people might be seeking out a therapist because they want to make sure that I'm not crazy, is this happening type thing. And that's what I'm trying to tell you is not that easy to determine from the
Mhm.
therapist point of view. But
Mhm.
so if you're going to a therapist, they can't stop targeting. Now, like I said, in certain instances, like if you have a good subject, like someone like me that specializes in clinical hypnosis, I may be able to alleviate the symptoms because for a certain percentage of people, like I could help them with the tinnitus.
Right.
Tinnitus, tinnitus, I've heard it both ways. But I mean, so you might be able to help because it affects, even with pain, hypnosis can be very effective with sensory bodily sensations. So you might be able to affect the auditory effect too. I don't know. But I mean, if I can make your foot numb, it might have an influence on that. So that's something to look into more. But I'm doing a little speculation here. But it logically, I mean, for instance, I've had, and I don't want to give an overestimation because this isn't going to happen all the time, but I've had people coming to me with hallucinations that I've actually gotten rid of, helped them get rid of.
That's amazing.
Um, yeah, right, but I'm not saying that's the norm. That's somebody who's was a really good subject. But and whether that person actually had schizophrenia or I don't, they had one person, let's say, give them a diagnosis of schizophrenia. The other one, it was anxiety induced hallucinations and delusion, but so it's possible. So I guess that might be something to be added into the toolbox of treatments. But outside of that, a therapist can only help you cope with it.
Mm.
They can't fix the problem.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess we can switch gears. I know, and I follow you on Substack. I'm a fan of your work.
And you
Um,
should. You should.
yeah, I'll plug all you guys,
Yeah.
social media in here. But I'm curious to hear more about the authoritarians.
Psychopathic
Yes,
authoritarianism. Yeah, that's
yes,
my thing. I'm actually working
yeah,
on my book. I'm actually working on my book. I'm about 2/3 through.
nice.
Hopefully it doesn't suck, but yeah. So we saw it with COVID. We saw so look at and I talk a little bit about the dark tetrad, which is sadism, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. And I think that, like with COVID, what they did is they tapped into that. The leaders had it, but so did the masses of people. Sadism is a quality that most human beings possess in varying degrees. Like, sometimes your slapstick humor, like the Three Stooges, or your friend slips and falls on their butt and there's snow and you start laughing or something like that, or sarcastic humor, which I'm guilty of. That's a form of sadism, right? It's a benign form. Gossip gets a little bit more insidious, form of sadism, because they're taking pleasure in other people's pain for real. But then you get to your serial killers that are getting off on cannibalizing you, so that's a much worse form of sadism. But what we saw with these governments is they got a kick out of they got off on humiliating you. They had you wear the face diaper, they had you wear the face diaper, stand 6 feet apart, follow little lines on the floor, and all that nonsense. They got off on causing that pain and suffering. They're getting off on the pain and suffering they're causing by giving the chronic diseases and illnesses to people that are starting to get now. In that painful process, they get off on, but they also they're getting off on targeting people too, causing the pain there. But the sadism, they tapped into the everyday sadism. So, like when you saw the mob of soccer moms chasing the couple walking over there and along the park or the beach, without their masks on, they were getting off on the sadism. It's like when you put someone in the gatekeeper role, like whether like motor vehicles or even at the doctor's office, they go on this little power trip thing. And so they really worked on bringing that out in people, that those qualities. They worked on the narcissism too. Like obviously the leaders have this too, but we saw the communal narcissism on all of your social media. You just saw it with the Charlie Kirk thing where everybody had to give a statement about it. But you saw it during COVID where people would put the pictures of their masks on and on the social media, they're wearing their masks or getting their injection and so on. That's the communal narcissism, the virtue signaling. The collective narcissism is the us versus them thing. You saw that because you're evil because you didn't get the injection, or you're evil because you're not wearing a mask. And I think that's really tied into what we're seeing with the targeted individual phenomenon. Is there's a sadistic quality to this? To sexually assault someone wirelessly is about as sadistic as you can get.
Yeah.
And so I see psychopathic authoritarianism as it's a reoccurring pattern. It's like a morphic field of probability, and it just manifests differently at different times. What we're seeing now, because of the technology, is it's manifesting in a way that's unavoidable. We can't just go find another place and go settle over here and start a new city state. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to run. So we have no choice but to kill the beast. That's how I look at it. So I don't view myself.
Who's the beast? Where is the beast?
The beast is the international criminal class that just had this international criminal conspiracy to massively depopulate our planet. So the three things are depopulation, technocratic slavery, and transhumanism, and they're kind of all coupled together. And so I don't view myself as somebody who's targeted, but I mean, I've had the cable line to my house cut, and I have death threats and that kind of thing. But I just view myself as someone at war. But I think that we have to start coming after them the way they're coming after us. Asymmetrical warfare requires asymmetrical resistance, and so I believe in maximum pressure. So I don't believe defense is a path to victory. I think offense is the only path to victory. I don't know if I'm answering
what
your
would
question.
that look like? No, that was great.
Well, I mean, I think we have to come at it in different ways. I mean, for me, I'm trying to establish the fact that the COVID injections were a weapon in some jurisdiction somewhere, because then I think the whole house of cards is going to fall apart. Now, with the targeted individual program, exposing it would be, I think, pretty devastating. Showing proof, and that's where I think the whistleblower that Anna was talking about earlier, and Richard, like getting the whistleblower to come out would be devastating. And of course they'll try to silence it and cancel it and that kind of thing. I mean, I think right now, if you probably stood on your head and were juggling, then nobody would notice. That's the world we're living in right now. So it's censorship, and the censorship's still bad. It didn't go away after COVID. The shadow banning is pretty bad. I mean, I put my interviews on my Rumble channel too, but like my interview with Dr. McCullough got 75 views.
Wow.
That's not possible.
No,
Okay.
the shadow
on
banning.
Rumble, not on my Substack, on Rumble. But I mean, so shadow banning is real. So we're dealing with psychopathic authoritarians. I do know one thing is that they fear. How do I know that? Because they use fear to manipulate and scare the crap out of everybody. And so, you're going to die, get over it. Now, the question is are you going to live like a man or a woman and stand up, or are you going to grovel on your knees? It's really, how do you want to live? That's
love
really,
that.
and so there's a lot of fear driven into a lot of this, and don't do fear is a false god. Fear will not protect you.
Yep.
In a rare instance where the tiger's over there and fight or flight comes in, then it serves you. But for the most part, fear is a false god. Just like guilt is a way deep down to try to manipulate God. You're going to be forgiven for your past sins and rewarded later. I think it just goes back to when we used to sacrifice, animals and humans to the gods. It's just guilt doesn't really serve as much either. Healthy regret, yeah, you're not a psychopath or a sociopath, but and I think so. Yeah, I see this as a reoccurring pattern in history. It manifests differently at different times. It's like find a person who's your most sadistic person and then find a person with the most obsessive compulsive tendencies, wrap them up together, and there's your psychopathic authoritarian. There's your psychopathic authoritarianism, because they want to control every aspect of everything. They fear the ambiguity of freedom. They are terrified of it. Freedom is the scariest thing to them.
When you say they fear, what does that mean exactly?
Well, they fear because they believe in fear, because they used it on you. I mean that rhetorically, because they use that. They believe in fear.
Oh, I see what you mean, because they believe it.
And remember, these are people that they're godless. They're ultimate materialistic. Like these people are so materialistic. They think that like consciousness is an illusion. They're that far. And that's why they're trying to find a way to live forever, like to merge human beings with technology, because they fear non-existence. Non-existence is an illusion anyway, because you can only conceive of it while you're in existence. So that's just total BS. It's not a testable or falsifiable scientific hypothesis. So we only know existence, right? So, but they fear non-existence so much that they're literally trying to like live forever. That's what part of this experiment is about, right? So they merged with technology to live forever, which is the ultimate Faustian deception, because then you're stuck in this dimension. That's like literally doing a deal with the devil and losing your soul. But that's how stupid they are. So we're dealing with crazy people with a lot of resources.
So what would you say to the TI that is struggling to sort of like step out of their fear, right, or comfort? I know we need more people to step forward and speak up and tell their stories. Like, what would you say to them in order for them to break free of this illusion? Because fear is not real. So what would you say to them to kind of break out of that?
Well, one, I wouldn't avoid getting help. I would try to find the right help, because you need to do some form of differential diagnosis. Like Dr. Len Barrett did a differential diagnosis and got his diagnosis. I don't think you should avoid. You need to go to the right people though, because a lot of people are just going to totally blow you off and gaslight you. But I think you do need to make sure that look, if I'm having like hallucinations or delusions, and like that could be indicative of a serious medical condition too. I could have a brain tumor, so it could have been operated on. So I don't want to you need to rule out a lot of medical things first, but I think that the advice of tapping into your higher self is very, I think, apt, that Melissa was saying earlier. I think getting yourself to structure yourself, journaling is a good idea. I think working on interrupting the pattern, trying to, you're stuck in a rut. You got to interrupt the pattern. The problem is there's no simple solution here, because if you are literally getting hit with frequency, as far as we know, there's no way to stop that yet, unless these devices or something like that's effective. The gang stalking, I think, I would try to get evidence of it, video or something like that. So I guess my advice is to try to interrupt the pattern, don't isolate, be around people. If you can find a support group, that's good. Because here's the thing, that's the best advice I can give, really, is to not isolate, be around other people, find other people that have similar similar issue, similar groups that are, if you can find support groups.
That was really good advice. And I know you also mentioned one of the ways for us to at least make better choices in who we go to, right? And who we choose for treatment, etc. One of the ways is the COVID shot. If they don't know that that was, it's really a weapon, then, that's an X. But what are maybe
At a
two
very
other?
minimum, at a very minimum, if they're not gonna, they should at least be admitting that they're bad and you shouldn't take them. At a very
Okay.
minimum, if they're not even awake to that, then run the other way.
Okay. So
You
what
shouldn't
are
be going. You
maybe
shouldn't
two
be going to a
others?
doctor that doesn't know that.
It's
That's
true,
not a good
especially by
doctor.
now. Yeah, I agree. So maybe like one or two more things that a TI can walk away with here today and say, okay, I feel confident that I could ask these three questions. And based on their answers, I'll feel comfortable getting treatment.
Well, I think referrals are good too.
Okay.
Now, I'm used to that. Like that when I mean, I've been in Florida since 2004, but I remember I was told when I came down here is make sure you get good referrals because, like with the medical doctors down here, you got really good and really bad. And so I think referrals are important. If you know somebody from the target community that's found a good medical doctor that's going to treat this in a certain way, so referrals I think would be very important.
Okay, great. And then one more.
Um,
If you don't have it, it's okay.
yeah,
Because
I
I'm
don't
going to
have it.
add it on our website just so that people at least have that and they'll feel more comfortable, getting help. Because I know many in our community, they don't want to simply because they're afraid that they'll be dismissed or, called out as crazy. So this is really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, now I don't take insurance, so I really don't diagnose people. Like a big, so I know people are afraid of the diagnosis and the label. So maybe if you have the money, is to find somebody who's not taking insurance because they don't necessarily have to apply a diagnosis to you.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay. It's very good to know. Cool. Thank you so much. Well, I know we touched on this very briefly, Anna, in regards to like the mass shootings in the United States, especially recently. And I know you said that you do believe that absolutely these people who have done the mass shootings are most likely MK Ultra or TIs or both, right? You want to give us a little more information on that? Or give us more feedback in regards to like what are the key indicators that might point to those things?
Well, there's a common thread of they were hearing voices. These are people that were perfectly normal or are vets, and then all of a sudden, because as you know, there are a lot of victims of government weaponization that are vets. So that's one of the situations. The second situation is when you look at the case of Robert Card, who was the main shooter. Well, they had his brain was part of, they did an autopsy on him, and he had brain injury consistent with Havana syndrome. He prior to the event, he heard voices. He heard his buddies saying he was a pedophile. It was the voices of his buddies, of his friends. And so what I'm thinking here is if they go down the rabbit hole and they look at the science, they can connect the dots. Who are the real criminals that pulled the trigger? And I'm absolutely certain this can be done with every single one of them. It's just going down the rabbit hole. But as we know, the CIA covers up, hides evidence, threatens people, and they threaten doctors. I'm sure it's the CIA threatening Dr. Hoffer. So that's where I would go. It just takes at least the main shooter would be a great starting point because we have an autopsy on him with the results of his brain, and I think that could expose a lot.
So what do you think, like what else is being done in regards to that specific case? I'm not following it exactly, so I don't know. Is that something actively being discussed?
No, I think that we need, once this program is exposed, when we get the list of who was there, we're going to find the names of these people.
Yeah.
And that is when those families of those victims will have a means of redress
Yeah.
to go
agree.
against the criminals that really pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
We have multiple. Targeted Justice put out a newsletter here maybe 6 weeks ago where we came up with a list of shooters that were hearing voices. I think we've got more than 30
Yes, I
names and
remember.
locations and dates going back to the 1990s.
Wow.
For example, the shooter in the movie theater in Aurora, Colorado, right in the CIA's back door. There are a number of mass shooting events that happened in that area over the last 20 years. Another example is Stephen Marlowe, who did 4 murders. He was hearing voices, and the voices were his neighbors on both sides of his house. A single mom and teenage daughter, and on the other side was an elderly couple. He ended up shooting all 4 of them, had free run of their house. He was convinced that the voices were theirs, but as Targeted Justice has said repeatedly, these are computer-generated voices. There's a software program called Adobe Voco that with just a few minutes of sampling of your voice on a phone call or other means, and they can computer generate your voice very accurately. And so it's clearly what the CIA is using under their psychological operations. And it's uncanny that the number of shooters that are hearing voices. So I think that list that we've developed and published, it could be a helpful starting point.
Do you know if like you get phone calls every day now, and a lot of these are like they're hanging up, and they're I think they're like you'll talk and then it'll hang up, and they're automated. It's not like a person's there, and it seems like they're trying to get your voice signature. And just curious, do you think that's I'm assuming they're a telemarketing call, but I wonder if that's part of the program, like what you just mentioned there, to get your voices to do that.
It's certainly possible. My understanding is there are a number of programs, software programs that have this capability now. And it's my understanding it takes several minutes of conversation to get an accurate model. There was a woman back during the Obama administration that claimed that Obama was talking to her personally through voice to skull and instructed her to come to the White House immediately and
Save him
and help him. And she ended up trying to drive through the gates at the White House, and she ended up getting shot. So it's uncanny the number of incidents of violence that are associated with this voice to skull technology that's been thoroughly documented by Dr. James Lynn in his book Auditory Effects of Microwave Radiation.
And it may be done in conjunction with traditional drug-induced brainwashing techniques. Because remember, Ted Kaczynski allegedly was part of the MK Ultra program in Yale. So I mean, this goes back quite a while. He was the Unabomber, if you guys remember, and so it kind of goes back a long time.
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah.
Awesome. Any final words? I would like to wrap this up, and maybe you all can give the TIs watching, and really anyone who's tuning in, some words of encouragement. We're going through a whole lot right now. I think as a collective, not all at once.
I'll just say self-awareness is important. I think self-awareness is really important.
It is. I agree. Anything from you, Anna and Richard? I'm so happy to have you guys. You guys are the frontliners. I actually was trying to get you some flowers. I asked a couple people. I'm trying to mail them some flowers. Because the saying, I want to show you your flowers. And I really do. I feel like you guys have done so much for our community. And I don't think you get all of the flowers and, the acknowledgement and respect you deserve. So I want to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
For being a part of
Thank
this.
you. Well, this is a great gift because for us, anyone that is doing credible work out there to expose this program is a gift. And what I can tell you is that since I've been here doing this fight, we have done really good work. And even though the scales of justice are not there yet to recognize this program, I think that during the past 8 months, a lot of evidence has been uncovered, a lot of documents have been declassified, and I think we are on the path to freedom. And I don't say that lightly, but it requires that everybody stand up and fight for their freedom. They cannot just rely on you, on this small group of people, or the small group of people that are always doing the fight in the forefront. Everybody needs to wake up every morning and say, what am I going to do to end my targeting? And it can be from the very little to a big effort, but they cannot let the criminals push back. They have to fight, and peacefully, of course, and help us do this, because we are very close to it. It just takes a community effort.
I agree. Any final words from you, Richard?
Yeah, Targeted Justice has, I want to echo what Ann is saying. Targeted Justice has a list on our website under the activism tab. It's called How to Fight Back. We've got dozens of examples of things that if you're a targeted individual and you want to fight back, and we only advocate for nonviolent solutions. And so we've got dozens of things that you can do to help us fight back, all of it perfectly legal. So take a look at that on our website at targetedjustice.com.
Awesome. Thank you. And lastly, Kim and Melissa, any final words?
Kim, you want to go first, or I can?
Sure. I just say what I always say. Stay strong. We got this.
Love that.
For me, I would say don't lose hope. You're not alone. To me, it's really important to connect with those that understand what you're going through. TIevents.org has done a phenomenal job of organizing everything that is related to targeted survivor. That is conference calls, podcasts, and meetups. And if there is not something in your area, maybe you'll be inspired to create a meetup where you are, where, start out maybe with a teleconference, or, do a physical meetup. But the important thing is to keep going, never lose hope, connect in with God and a higher power, and don't ever give up on yourself, and do things that will lead you down that path of self-care, empowerment, and healing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, each and every one of you. I am so grateful to have you join us today for day 2 of the Unmasked Symposium. Stay tuned, y'all. We have so much more to cover on day 3. And until then, thank you.